Greetings, everyone. This is what they call it, Labor Day weekend. And I'm going to give a class on some ideas. I have someone asked me some questions about police tickets. Now, I don't have police tickets. So all I'm speaking of is academically speaking. I've studied these ideas, but I have no need for them because I don't need them. But this is a good friend who have some experienced some difficulties. So I'm going to give this. Class, and I'm going to cover four ideas. The first one is status. The next one is jurisdiction. The third idea is contracts, and the fourth one is constitution. Status. We all have to be in the right status in this country. If your status is African American, colored, Negro, white, Asian, any of those statuses that they give you the options of being, you are nothing but a franchise, meaning you are bought and paid for. You are someone's property. So when I say be in the right status, you have to identify yourself with your ancestors. There's no way around it. Yes, indigenous is good. However, there's no established law for indigenous people because they was in their own jurisdiction. They didn't need the law. So we have to go to our ancestors. Now, the ancestors for the so-called Black Americans, you will find the law was made for Moors. That's what Othello was about. The Moors. This is one knowledge they would, when I say they, I'm talking about the spiritual powers that be. Do not want you to know about your ancestry, your Moor ancestry, because they owe everything to you. I'm looking at my glasses. I say some of y'all tripping. But I like these glasses. These are my safety glasses. They make me feel good. That's why I wear them. They're doing something for my eyes because my eyes feel good when I'm wearing them. Now, when you talk about status, as I said, it has to do with your ancestral roots, legally or lawfully. You have to be able to trace it in the law. Europeans, they go back with the common law in Europe. However, you have to have a identity of a country because the only Americans are the Moors and the indigenous people. Europeans, you can never be Americans because you have no roots here. You are what you call interlopers, or as the Black Panthers say, colonizers. So you still can have a status, but it has to be from one of the countries you come from. That's going to take us to the next one, which is jurisdiction. Jurisdictions mean everything. It means coming under the law of a place. Now, if you're in America, if you're born here, you are placed under the 14th Amendment, especially since you have no status. The status is as a slave. That's all the 14th Amendment made you. It really enslaved all the people. So to be in the right jurisdiction, you have to see yourself, you have to put yourself outside of this corporation. What corporation? The United States Corporation. Contrary to popular opinion, the United States is not a landmass. Nope, it's a corporation. And that corporation has laws for its citizens. Another name for citizens could be employee. Now, this is my research. You do your own. But I'm sharing this because someone asked me a question, and I've done a lot of study on these ideas, so this is an opportunity for me to share them. And you can use them to your best ability to address whatever problems you have. As I said, I don't get tickets, so I don't have these problems. But I have studied these ideas, and I know a lot of people who have used them with success. Now, where was I at? I digress. Status is a 14th Amendment citizen, mean you are their slave. If you haven't rebutted that presumption, meaning if you haven't changed the records, then you are in the jurisdiction of the U.S. corporation. And you really have no rights for what they give you, which are privileges. That's the jurisdiction that says you have to have license. They changed, well, they did a job on everybody. And you can, this is settled constitutional law. Some of them are Murdoch versus Pennsylvania, Shackelford versus, well, go look it up. Go look it up. I'm not prepared to go through all the Supreme Court cases at this moment. However, the idea is that what this corporation has done is taken a right, a God-given right, and converted to a privilege, and then make you pay for licenses. All this is because you're in their jurisdiction. When you look at jurisdiction as being an employee in a company, as long as you're an employee in that company, you got to follow their rules, which are statutes and codes. As long as you're in their employ, you come under their jurisdiction. You come under their laws. That takes me to the next one, which is contracts. Contracts. This is what the Uniform Commercial Code is all about. The contracts. Why do we have the Uniform Commercial Code? Because this country is bankrupt. That's why we have all of these emergencies, continual emergencies, one after another. Because as long as the country's in an emergency, it can put up these programs that operate under emergency. Now, when Roosevelt came in, it was at a time when America was just about on its last leg. So he had to do a lot of things to try to salvage this country, which really took away the republic and brought about the democracy, which you would not find mentioned I haven't seen it anywhere in the Constitution about a democracy. So that's a club formed from the corporation, really to disenfranchise the people. Now, this is going pretty fast. I thought it would take a little more time to go through these ideas, but I'm doing good. If you do your research on democracy, you see the first installation of the democracy was under Andrew Jackson. What he did was disenfranchise the Indians. He put everything, in other words, he made them employees of the corporation. Do your research, you find they gave up their sovereignty. They fought a long fight for many years, but during his time in the 1833 to 1837, the Indians were made citizens, that is, employees. That's why they don't have to respect their contracts they made with them, because they own them, so to speak. And the reason why they did this to them, because they are not the real indigenous people. I digress. I'm going to stick to the 4 points I mentioned. I talked about status, talked about jurisdiction, and now we're talking about contracts, which is the base of the UCC. Now, back on topic. The UCC was started by the Moors because they're the one who traveled the world in the seas. Now, when you doing trade with countries, you got to have laws to make sure you get paid. Make sure you are not robbed. They call it the law of the seas. Now, because of the emergency, the law of the land could not be used because the land did not belong to the people who was ruling. So they have to find some collateral for these international bankers, which are all these 7 European countries who was invested in America. Because remember now, they said gold was a real only form of money because it has a store of value. And go back and fact check everything I'm sharing with you. You may find something I've overlooked. You may find something that you did not know. By not having the goal to pay off these international bankers, the people became the collateral. And the first contract written on you was your birth certificate. It's made of security. What is a security? A security is a piece of paper with some value to it. I've read that it was $1 million or $2 million for each person, birth, not BERTH, like a ship birth, but BIRTH. Every ship birthed into America. In other words, you dry dock because you broke through the birth canal, which is your mother's womb when she broke water and you was born. So you was manifested. That's why every ship has a manifest. I'm using these terms so you can see how the laws of the ship, the laws of the sea has been used to apply to people. That's why all these terms are used. So are you really a people or are you a commodity? Question. A commodity that has to be on a manifest in the dry dock, which is controlled by the banks. You see all these terms? These are commercial terms. The bank control the flow of currency. We don't have money. The money has a store of value. That is gold and silver. We have currency. You can take care of your current concerns. The banks control the currency to keep from overflowing. That's what the banks are for. Now, this is deep. It takes a lot of thought to understand how these terms are being used. And you can go back and listen to it however times you need. Look up these words that's being used. Look them up. Look them up. Now, when you look up words, you want a specific definition. The definition you want is the commercial definition. In some dictionaries, a commercial definition of a word would be about the third or fourth word. It won't be the first word. For example, you look up bank, it's going to say a building where money is exchanged. But you keep looking down for bank, they're going to talk about the river. So you look to the word that apply to the purpose that's being used. How my time going? Oh, I'm right on time, 17 minutes. Okay. So that brings us to the next and the final of these four ideas, which is Constitution. Because of the emergency, the Uniform Commercial Code was developed by the Moors to control commerce. However, the Constitution trumps all the UCC, and you can still use it, but you have to be in the right status and jurisdiction. That's why you go to some courts and you try to use the Constitution. They say you bring up the Constitution one more time, and I'm going to hold you in contempt of court. Because they don't use the Constitution. That's why you're in contempt of court if you try to bring it into the wrong jurisdiction. Now, to bring it in the right use the Constitution in the right jurisdiction, you have to be at the right status. You cannot be identified as an employee of the corporation. It'd be like you trying to tell your boss what to do as an employee. This is how you come in as a private, come in on the private side, which means you're a natural person. To have the protection of a private person, you have to be in a trust. Okay, we're talking about trust. Because you and I and people around the world are placed in a trust contract. The contract I spoke of, the birth certificate, it's a trust. Basically, what's being said is that you're born dead. They're making you a corporation and giving you an identity. They call it in legas, or some people call it a straw man, and they're making you liable to pay the debts. So you're a debtor. Now, when you get the knowledge of how to operate in the jurisdiction and the right status, you can change that. You can use your status as a private trust, and that way you can bring in the Constitution. So this Constitution is not dead. You just have to know when and how to use it. Okay, so go over these points I made. There's a lot more to be shared, but I just want to share these things because an understanding of these principles is what keeps you from having to worry about tickets. And I give you a quick remedy on departing. However, don't do it. Study it. Don't do it because I say do it. I'm telling you something that I've done, but the law's always changing. When you make a contract with the corporation, for example, I had an issue with the corporations. I did what's called administrative process. What is that? I wrote them a letter. I wrote them a letter of default. First, I gave them notice. Then I gave them opportunity to cure. Then I gave them default. I told them, no, I'm not the one. You see, even though you're a debtor, all your debts have been paid. That's what that trust birth certificate was made for. And all these other contracts made for you. Driver's license, mortgages. All these things are already paid for. And then you go to the Emergency Banking Act, and it tells you there is no money. But you have to know how to use the law in your favor. Since there's no money, how are you going to pay anybody? You tell them the Treasury is the obligator to pay all these debts. And I'm glossing over these terms because I just want to limit to about 20, 25 minutes. And as I said, look up these terms. Study, study, study. I'm not giving you any quick fix. I'm giving you an overview so you can go and do your in-depth study as I've done. I can say this with authority because I've been studying this type of knowledge for at least 10 years. So I got it under my belt. So I don't need nothing before me to read. I got it in my noodle. Okay? So that's what you have to do. Before you use it, you got to really understand what you're doing. Because if you don't understand what you're doing, you can get a charge, which is a tax. Remember, everything is commercial. Everything is commercial. That's why we need the Uniform Commercial Code. These lawmakers, what do? They make laws. But what do they call the laws in Congress? They call them bills. bills. The same type of bill. You pay your phone bill, you pay your light bill, you pay your mortgage bill. They're trying to make money off of you because you're the only creditor. You're the only ones on the stock market. Do you think it's some other corporations that exist outside of you? No, there's not. They're using your energy, your name, that's why I say everybody's a slave, because they're using your energy that generate the currency for these securities, these contracts, and they're making money off of it, interest that belongs to you, everybody should be a millionaire. But the money is going to, not say money, let's say the currency is going to the corporations because they got you on lockdown. You don't know how to use private banking. I think that's enough to tickle your brain. It's quite a lot, I must say. So study these terms, look them up, and when you understand what you're doing, you can write to these government officials, administrative process, write 3 letters, and if they don't answer on the 3rd letter, you put that all that on the UCC, and it's been discharged. They cannot answer you in truth because in truth you can't pay any money. There is none. So why are they coming after you? Because you don't know that. Do you know when you pay a bill, it's already been paid? Who paid it? You paid it. So when you give them some more currency, they're getting paid twice. That's why when you know how to operate with the Treasury Department and make a security, because that's all the contract is, they would pay you back twice. Because that's what they say in the Emergency Banking Act, dollar for dollar. Meaning they give you $1 for every dollar that you securitize with the Treasury Department. So I gave you a short view, but it's a lot of study. So I just got you started on looking up words. So when you read these things, it would all come together. I say it should take you about 3 years to really understand it. It amazes me how people may have let's say $100 ticket, and they go to some guru online who charges them $500 for something that don't even work. So just go and pay the ticket. You know, if you don't know how to operate, you don't know how to be a private trust natural person, to just go and pay the ticket. It'll save you a lot of trouble. I hope this has helped you. I've talked about 4 principles that's used in all dealings. I talked about status, knowing who you are, identifying with your ancestors, your birthright. If you don't have a birthright, nobody can respect you. They cannot respect you. That's what the case of Dred Scott was all about. He wasn't respected because he came in as a black man, a Negro, colored person. That is a slam in the face of your ancestors. You didn't know who he was. So you'll never be respected if you don't know who you are. So everything goes back to knowing who you are. And this knowledge will just gravitate to you when you have that will. You won't be paying the corporation. They'll be paying you. That's after you've done your due diligence and study. Study yourself to show yourself approved. If you're not studying, I don't know what your purpose is. So we talked about jurisdiction and being under the right place to be under the right law. If you're not under the right jurisdiction, you have no power. And we talked about contracts and the purposes of the UCC. Uniform Commercial Code, which is the Morse code. You've heard that term Morse code? It's really Moore's code because the Moors started that. So they say, oh, we got a man named Samuel Morse. Lie, lie, lie. 99% of what you've been taught is a lie. But when you study and the words come alive to you, that's when I would say you're being born again. Then you can understand some of these principles. A lot of you cannot understand these principles because you're still a corporation, which is a dead entity. So you have no attachment to the Supreme Being. So once you learn how to reattach yourself to your Creator, all these things will just come natural to you. I know I've talked enough now. I'm slobbering. Peace and love.